Milwaukee, supporting you know, just all the cool things that everyone's doing all over Milwaukee and Wisconsin, for that matter. So, you know, round of applause to all you crazy cats out there. Next, we'd like to thank Ezekiel. So this is Ezekiel Chetnik. So he's the one who put together the React Wisconsin Meetup. You know, just looking to bring everyone together to share what he's doing, to share what he knows, and to meet more of you, you know, great people. We also like to thank Dana and Alex, who are going to be speaking today. They're right over here, Dana and Alex. And then we'd like to thank Ryan. Woo! I'd like to thank Jill as well. She's in back, probably doing some amazing things, but she did a lot of hard work.
She's eating tacos.
But she did a lot of stuff getting everything together, and this wouldn't be possible without her or Eli as well, who's somewhere in the crowd here. There he is. There you are, Eli. And then we had AJZ here helping everyone come up the stairs, and many more. Last but not least, I'd like to thank NM for sponsoring this to feed all you crazy cats with your Taco Tuesdays. And then the next thing is we want to make sure that you guys are tweeting tonight, right? So I know you all have smartphones on you, right? Don't even pretend like you didn't come here for that one. So we want you to tweet at ReactJS Wisconsin, hashtag ReactJS Wisconsin, hashtag I am cool. You can also hashtag pause is cool, like that's cool with me. I don't really care. And then I'd like everyone just to turn around and meet somebody that you haven't met before. Maybe introduce yourselves. Is Zeke, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the agenda.
Yeah, so we're going to get started with some lightning talks. Hopefully they're actually lightning. They might take, some of them might run up over a little bit, and then we're going to take a break and do some giveaways. We have like a ton of cool stuff. We have headphones, we have ReactJS sweatshirts, some NM swag, and then once we're done with that, we'll actually do a dev trivia with the ReactJS application we built, and give away Nerf guns and battle it out like geeks. So yes. Oh, at the end of this, we'll probably end up posting our slides and or repos up on our GitHub channel or our GitHub organization and Slack channel. So if you guys are interested in joining our Slack channel, joining the organization, send us your emails through Meetup, and we'll get that all set up for everyone. Yeah. And so this is Ryan Walkie-Talkie.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ryan Wachholz. Today I'm going to be talking about what is ReactJS and what the heck makes it so cool. It sounds like it's kind of a mixed crowd in here as far as what people have dealt with React. Some people haven't done it at all. Some of it's been self-taught. So my goal here is just kind of try to show you some of the uniqueness or exactly what makes it so cool, and maybe push you towards using it more. As a quick blurb about myself, I've been at Northwestern Mutual for 8 years, primarily a backbone developer. I only have been doing React for about 3 months. But yeah, all questions welcome. I will just defer them to Zeke. So, all right, I am going to sit for part of this. Well, yeah, on the agenda you'll see at the end live coding. I'll sit for that, but I'm also going to sit to zoom in. I found out that some of these are actually kind of hard to see from the back when I have some coding examples. But real quickly, I'm going to go through about ReactJS. Right here I have a link to the documentation. I'm not going to go to it. Kind of early on with the whole React deal, a lot of people complained is that it's so cryptic or you don't know what's going on, but now the documentation is exceptional out on the Facebook repo, so it's definitely worth checking out if you ever have any questions for anything you're working on. Next I'll go into JSX, which isn't part of React at all. It's actually a piece that goes on top of it, but it's truly important. I think you'll see that as we look through some of the code and why JSX is really actually part of, or should be part of ReactJS. And then we'll go through components, prop, specs, lifecycle, and state. And those are really the things that drive React, make it what it is, and most importantly, the virtual DOM. So then after that, we'll go through a few coding sessions. So real quick, it was written by Facebook. Most of you probably know that. I checked on their site yesterday. There's 339 sites that say that they use ReactJS as their website. I'm sure there's a lot more than that don't claim it. I mean, the stuff that we write isn't out there, but the crowd is definitely growing, and it will continue to. So it's a declarative view layer. So everybody's familiar with MVC. Well, really this does represent just the view layer, but it doesn't limit you to not being able to create a full-fledged application with ReactJS. The nice thing that it's declarative is that anytime the state changes, it's going to automatically update itself. And we'll get into that a little bit more with the virtual DOM. And it represents a component as to what it should look like. And you'll see that in the JSX, is that you're writing a React component that you're able to manipulate, but yet you can look at it and you know exactly what it looks, or exactly what it is. Oh yeah, additionally, to talk about declarative, again, when the state changes, it renders the state that it needs to, the minimal object of what the state updated to go forward, where in other languages like Backbone and Angular, you find yourself putting a lot of triggers in a lot of locations, listening, God only knows where, and hoping that everything manages to update itself. So the fact that it's declarative is really helpful. Abstracting out the DOM, that again keys on the point that the DOM and the view are one, and you don't have your HTML template and then your view layer elsewhere. Encourage a well-defined component lifecycle. We'll go into that. There are defined functions that make it easy to use to hit, to do certain things that you want to a component throughout the lifecycle. And you have encourages unidirectional data flow. It's not absolutely a must, but it's super helpful with states and props. You don't really have the two-way data binding, and when state were to happen to change, it's going to make the update. If you want state to change in multiple areas, you can assign it to a parent, and it's able to, that single state change is able to keep going. So server-side rendering and client-side rendering, I'm not going to talk about it any more than what I do right now, and that's just the fact that you can actually render your entire site on the server, bring it down. It's a lot faster than rendering it on the client side, but then actually going forward, you can do client-side rendering, which kind of makes your whole site fast, not just a slow lag to load initially or vice versa. And then we'll get into the virtual DOM, and the whole concept is, I mean, virtual DOM isn't necessarily new, but they really make it work well in ReactJS by taking a virtual copy of the DOM. The DOM goes out and renders, a state changes, the virtual DOM updates, it diffs, updates just what it needs to. So first we'll talk about JSX. So yeah, I'm gonna sit for this part. I don't wanna make it feel like I'm the Wizard of Oz or something like that, but JSX is, XML syntax transform. So let's look at some of the code right here. So this is just plain vanilla JavaScript, and this is how you'd write React. Well, you look at it, it kind of seems kind of cryptic. Now we're calling a div, we're assigning a class, just to know class is a reserved word, so class name represents class. And I think within it we have, an anchor. We're setting the href of the anchor, and we're opening the text. So it's like, yeah, you get what's going on, but you can imagine the complex structure that this just really isn't conducive for. And here's what that exact same representation looks like in JSX. You're really defining a div. You set your class, you have your href wrapped inside of it, you have your text. Well, it looks like how you'd write it if you were just writing straight HTML, really. It's key to note that it's not HTML at this point, it is JSX, and it will be compiled, and really when it's all said and done, it's just JavaScript. Worth noting, other frameworks put JavaScript in the HTML, like in reference to templates, you have a lot of conditionals and everything kind of muddying up the template, that it's hard to look at a template and say, okay, this is what it is. Here it's the HTML is actually in the JavaScript. So a component is just a structure, and it's stateful, which makes it awesome, meaning that if it has a state element in it and that state changes, it's not going to re-render even the entire component. It's still just going to render the lowest level that it would need to make the appropriate change. So I have a few other additional things in here, but really I created a component. Tacos were a bad choice. We have a hello component, which the only required function for a component is to have render. So what's it going to bring back? A return statement. We have a header, hello, and we'll get into props more, but it's outputting a property. Well, if you look down here, group name is passed into this actual component from state. It's kind of obviously just an example. Group name isn't probably something that's necessarily stored in state. State is something that should stay as concise and small as possible. It really increases the performance when it goes to doing DOM diffing. So props, a lot like that last example, it really defines what the component is, and you never change props. If you needed to do something with a prop, you could assign it to a variable, so on and so forth, and use it later on, but you don't change it. So this is a lot like the last example. Now we're passing in a greeting, hello, comma, group, ReactJS Wisconsin. And then my div is just it's an empty tag, which you'll see later when we start coding what that does. Here are the specs and lifecycle. I have ellipses at the end because this is really just a subset of the specs and lifecycle methods that there are on a React component. Get initial state, sets the initial state, default props. You can kind of understand. Here's a link here if you do pull down the slides that takes you to the list of all of them. Will mount, it's before rendering, did mount, after rendering, and should component update is a Boolean whether or not that component is going to update. So state is pretty awesome. It's a single source of truth. So you think of it as far as something that's going to change, a user interaction. And then if that happens, you set state. Yeah, you probably can't see my mouse. I don't know if it's a, I don't like that either. All right. So set state, auto triggers UI updates by the virtual DOM. So here we have the example of the message component now has its own state component. So ReactJS Wisconsin. Again, kind of a poor example because a group in this context can change, but it's not really set up for in an application that like the group would change. It'd really be at the high level, but just for simplicity's sake. So, and then render, state.group. So now onto the virtual DOM. It's a JavaScript tree of React elements and components. You don't ever manipulate the DOM manually, and it's no total refresh when data changes. So a lot of times when you have a view with something in it and something changes, you really have to re-render the whole view. This is really down to the specific line item, and I guess in hindsight I wish I would have put in a slide for that, but not completely necessary. And it doesn't need to, with the virtual DOM, it doesn't need to traverse the entire DOM tree. Like if you think of a jQuery selector that really, is pretty slow to try to find something, to try to do something with it, this is a lot faster. I'll do a quick zoom. There's a little bit more data on this than we need. So, I can't laser pointer and zoom. All right, so first we have the DOM. DOM, which is really with the examples that we're talking about. We have this flux redux structure. We're kind of going to ignore that for now, but that's definitely going to be a talk in the near future. I know that's very influential on how you write really a full-fledged application with React, but it's the idea that the user input goes to the React component, render is then called, the virtual DOM is created, that virtual DOM is then diffed against the existing DOM, and then it just updates the small piece that changes. All right. So let's give this a go.
I think that humming is our old mainframe computers.
So right here, I think it's zoomed in, I guess, as much as I can go. Right here, I downloaded the tutorial that they'll walk through you on the Git repository for Facebook. It walks you through a lot cooler example than I'm going to do here, but I really just pulled so I don't have to spin up my own server. I also have nothing. I should have written a watch for these changes. Right now, I'm going to stop and restart the server real quick. But this is completely slimmed down. All we have here is a single page. We are including ReactJS. We have React DOM.js, and then additionally, because we're using JSX, we're using Babel. So you'll see the tag down here for Babel. That's really what's going to compile our JSX into JavaScript to be able to use in the browser. So this entire page, believe me, I'm not going to scroll down, only consists of content. So, all right, well, we'll take a look at our first example. Here we have a React DOM.render. So the first element here is JSX. The second one is the element in which you want to attach it to. So it's saved. So refresh this. So nothing is going to change, but hi, ReactJS Wisco. So let's break this out, make it a little bit cooler, and we will create our own component. So we'll say my component, which is a React.create class. Now we're creating the actual variable, and so like I said before, the only thing that an actual component needs is a render, so we're going to start with that at this point. And the only thing we're going to do with render is just return JSX, and this is wrapped in parentheses because why, Zeke? So you can have spaces in multiple lines for the elements that you put in here. Thank you. So actually, I'm just going to cut this guy. I'll put it here, throw some exclamation points so you believe me that something, or I actually did something here. And we will say my component. So again, a lot like the examples that we went through. Yay. Round one. All right, let's up the ante here. So let's start by passing props in. So let's say we have my component, and I want to pass it again. We'll do a greeting. Greeting. Oops. And so we're passing it actually JavaScript. So putting it in curly braces, put it as a string, and I'm going to say welcome. And we'll toss one more on there anyway. So we'll say group name equals everyone. Pretty unexciting, but now that we pass these in, now we have props that we can deal with. So inside of our H1, we will say this is JavaScript, so we'll say this dot props dot greeting, and then for the group, we'll do the same thing. This dot props dot group name. All right, fingers crossed. Round two. Welcome everyone. So that's still all right. It's kind of the basics of it. I think you'll find yourself many times potentially passing props down. Not really this component not really needing to be stateful, but I guess we'll deal with some state now and see how we actually can account for that. All right, so right now, let's see, what should we do? We'll add a button, a like button. And one thing to note, render can only return a single object, so because I'm going to add a button to it, I'm still going to wrap it in a div. We'll say, welcome everyone's kind of a silly, whatever. We'll continue with the button. And we'll say type equals button. We'll do like we haven't dealt with state yet in this example either. So we'll say this dot state dot likes. So that will output the likes that we have, and we'll just put the text after it of likes. Okay, so we have state, but we haven't defined state yet. We have nothing being passed. Well, state isn't passed in, but we have no properties either to output there. So now we're going to go with the get initial state. We're going to define that additionally, and all that really needs to return is an object. So our object here, all we need are likes, spelled correctly, and we'll start out with 0. All right, now we have a button, still does nothing, not that cool, but we're just putting out initial state. So to up it once more, we'll attach a click event to the button. So we can say onClick equals, let's put in some JavaScript here. We'll just reference a function. We'll say liked it. So now we need to write liked it. I'm just going to leave this ugly. It's not going to change anything. So now we're going to set state. So we're going to say this dot set state, the only keyword, the only way to change state, and we're going to pass it in an object, and we're going to tell it what like should be. So like should be this dot state dot likes plus 1. Yay. So now, yeah, you wouldn't probably see any flash or any type of flicker on any other type of application. You've written something so small. But literally the only thing changing on this page are the number of likes. So that's what's cool, is that you're really relying on state. It is the truth, and that's what happens. I'm going to show one other slightly more complex thing for some people that may be already familiar with all the stuff we talked to, and it's like, oh, this is kind of boring. I'm just going to comment out what we wrote. What? And I'm going to uncomment this guy. All right, so before we, we'll just take a quick look at what this looks like. So I have two identical components. I passed in, you'll see how it goes. So yeah, I can like it. Well, this actually has a separate state. Oh, it's changing colors, cool. Oh, it changed colors again, really cool. Oh, Zeke petered out at 8 likes. All right, but you'll notice that we have likes here, and we also have likes here. Well, these are really in 2 different spots, as I'll show you in the code and how we handle that. So we start out, I just wrote a base app component. So we defined app component as a section with, oh, another component. All right, well, I passed a message into the component. Yeah, we'll just pretend like Zeke isn't here. And now we're going to take a look at my component. Well, this is really looking about exactly the same as what I just wrote for you before. But you'll notice a couple of things different at the top of render. I mean, it is just JavaScript. Well, I'm going to take a look at state and change a few things. So I just added a silly class of likability, you know, if you're at 5, 10, etc., attached onto the class. Oh, but now what? I have 2 more components, but I have liked it actually in the my component piece, but you'll see that I have a title component, which passes in the state of likes, and I also have the like component, which passes in the state of likes. The difference here is that the like component is actually taking a callback function of liked. So if we go up, we'll skip title for now, and we'll look at the like component. It's saying on click, take this .props.callback function and call it up here. And then it's going to repropagate itself because it's like, oh, well, the state has updated, I've passed state to the title, and I've passed state to the like component. So go into those, find the minimal change that's taken place and update it. And then you'll see title is just the snippet of, this is the message that came all the way through. Probably didn't need to pass it that far along, but I did. And then you have the props of likes, just in a superscript, and the text likes. So that's actually all I have for you guys right now. I hope you kind of got a little bit of a taste of what React can be if you really, spend some time with it. Kind of hopefully got everybody's feet wet a little bit. Does anybody have any questions? Yep.
So one of the big benefits of this that you can see right now would be the immediate response for end users. So users use the application and it responds right away.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, when we start to save those likes in a database, are you kicking that off to a service then and just assume you're going to increment? Like, how are you handling that delay?
It's a great question. Zeke?
No, I guess there's two ways to handle it. I guess it depends on if you're implementing like Flux architecture. You can create actions that can actually do async requests.
Yeah, actually I had that slide on that, which I guess if I would have gone into it, it really goes one step deeper. And so now it knows there's a user action. It says, okay, go deal with this API before it actually comes back to do the DOM diff. So there could be a lag on the like, but that would really just be on the back end of saving the data. It's still going through that same flow, it's just when it gets to the React component, it's just gonna go a little bit further, go through kind of the Flux Redux piece, make the updates, and then render it.
Right. And you don't necessarily also have to use Flux. You
Right.
can just do it
Sorry.
in the component, old school, async style.
You can just do it the regular async style.
Yeah.
You just hold this for the next one. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, did anybody think it was mildly helpful? Was it too fast? I'm just looking for a little bit of feedback.
I think it was a good start. I came here because I was JavaScript based, so
Yep.
I wanted to learn more about it. So
Exactly.
I guess I could get the code off of GitHub, I believe.
Yep, there'll be a Git repository. I think it'll all be out on Meetup or the links to it. But yeah, the key was that we have some people that have written some React. We have some people that have written no React, but we didn't expect you to. The idea is we want to start with a very low level, kind of try to get you going. The more meetups we have, I mean, there's a ton of stuff to talk about. So, all right, yep.
Quick question. So, how do you deal with styling using React components?
I did have the reference to class name in here. It's a little, I mean, that's a variable class, but you really do inline code your classes. The one nice thing is that UI designers may be a little bit intimidated by it because there is some extra jargon in there, but from what I've read and dealt with is that they're easily able to adapt, and they're still looking at really a snapshot of what that piece of the code looks like. You know, you may not have your inheritance from higher up visually, but they're still able to see, well, okay, this is a list, these are the items I can add a class. Did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so the applications we're working on at NM, I guess it's a mixture, I guess it depends on the application, what the requirements are. If you're building with like one component, maybe it makes sense to do inline modular CSS. Or if you're working with like a bunch of developers across the team and you need to build some sort of UI toolkit, which we're actually doing. We actually have a UI toolkit based on Foundation, and we're old school CSS.
But this is
We're gonna go ahead.
sorry.
What's up? No.
Is there a way to wire up events without using the onClick attribute?
I don't know what all the event wiring is. I thought it actually was you do use onClick there's a whole list of events. I actually left events out just because I thought it'd be a little bit much, but
Well, because I teach a JavaScript class, and I tell my students you're not going to have JavaScript in your HTML, and
that goes kind of
we're
even to
going back
Zeke's
to
point
it.
about, it kind of sets you up to do inline styling, which is, again, has also been, it is kind of going against the grain in that regard too, but
I think it's called JSX Shock. It's like
Okay.
completely different than what we're used to coming from MVC world, where you're supposed to separate your view layer from your data layer,
And you have to think though, now the view and the actual component are the same thing. So you can't really listen on a class, it's all right there. So you kind of have to do it all right there.
and React does magic. It does
Magic. Auto delegating and all that.
Is Google search gonna penalize your SEO for, having stuff backwards?
I read an interesting piece though with doing, I guess I can't really relay it, but that with the server-side rendering, it actually gets exceptional SEO. I can't tell you why, but that's what I read from some random person on the internet. Zeke wrote it. That was another one right here. Jewel?
I was just gonna comment on the CSS thing. It seems like it's leading you towards using class names and adding them as properties onto the HTML, so you could still right-click and copy that and send it to the designer when you're done.
Exactly. Question?
Well, the other question was, I come from more of the web development side. I dabble through, and still in college, dabble a little bit in MVC, but in this case, it's all done in like a JavaScript file. And then HTML, do you like merge it slightly? Do you do like little merging with it in certain areas, tell it to target certain areas that got the HTML, or is it all just pure JavaScript?
It's really going to come down to all being just pure JavaScript, because if you have a component, even if it does nothing, even if it has 0 properties or state, you could either build it out in the overlying page, but if you need this to be the page, it's just going to have that structure and components in JavaScript, and it's going to be rendered then.
That's interesting.
You can attach components to different areas of the domino. So like if you had
Exactly.
multiple places that you wanted to insert components to, you could pick and choose DOM elements that you want.
Right, so I just did content, and to AJZ's point is that you can have different areas throughout the site. Like you already have your structure in the actual body here, but you may only attach your components to the footer.
Oh, okay, like to a footer, a sidebar, or just a special
Exactly.
area. Okay.
Exactly. So then I can still say it's just raw HTML.
Oh, okay, wow, that's actually pretty cool.
Good to hear. All right, yeah. Well, thank you guys. Enjoy the rest. Oh.